Ukraine, 1994. The year of the Great Betrayal? The year 1994 became a focal point for Ukraine. It was a time when the young nation finally severed the umbilical cord with its Soviet past and emerged onto the world stage as an independent, powerful, and responsible player. For the Western world, Ukraine in 1994 was a mystery, a massive country with nuclear missiles, enduring a severe crisis, yet choosing the path of democracy over dictatorship. The shift of eras and the first test of democracy. While in many former republics of the Soviet Union, power was held for decades by the same leaders, Ukraine in 1994 created a precedent for a peaceful and legal transfer of authority. In March and April, elections for the Verkhovna Rada, the Ukrainian parliament, took place. It was an era of political ferment. 86 representatives of the Communist Party, who dreamed of restoring the past, won seats in parliament, but they were opposed by a powerful coalition of National Democrats from the People's Movement. More than 51% of the deputies were independent self-nominated candidates. These were red directors of factories, entrepreneurs, and activists who were learning to build a state from scratch. The main event of the summer was the early presidential election. The first president, Leonid Kravchuk, faced off against former Prime Minister Leonid Kuchma. Kuchma was a technocrat, the former director of the Yuzhmash plant, where the most formidable missiles of the Soviet Union were built, known in the West as the Satan missiles. On July 10, 1994, Leonid Kuchma won, receiving 52.14% of the vote. Ukraine proved, here the fate of the country is decided by the people at the ballot boxes, not by tanks in the streets. Portrait of a giant, a scale that astonishes. To understand the significance of Ukraine at that time, one must look at the numbers. It was a giant state exceeding France or the state of Texas in area. The territory of Ukraine in 1994 consisted of 603,628 square kilometers of sovereignty. It comprised 24 regions known as oblasts: Vinnytsia, Volyn, Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk, Zhytomyr, Zakarpattia, Zaporizhzhia, Ivano-Frankivsk, Kyiv, Kirovohrad, Luhansk, Lviv, Mykolaiv, Odessa, Poltava, Rivne, Sumy, Ternopil, Kharkiv, Kherson, Khmelnytsky, Cherkasy, Chernivtsi, and Chernihiv. A special entity was the Autonomous Republic of Crimea with the city of Sevastopol, a strategic southern outpost. At that time, 52 million people lived in the country. It was one of the most populous and educated nations in Europe. After the collapse of the Union, Ukraine inherited a colossal army. In 1994, 517,000 people served in the ranks of the armed forces. They were armed with thousands of T-80 tanks, modern fighter jets, and a massive fleet. Ukraine possessed the fourth most powerful army in Europe. Survival economics, millionaires in search of bread. Ukraine had already completely exited the Russian ruble zone. The currency in circulation was the Karbovanets coupon. Due to inflation, which amounted to more than 401% over the year, the dollar exchange rate soared from 12,000 in January to more than 100,000 coupons in December. Ukrainians became millionaires by necessity when a simple trip to the store required a whole stack of banknotes. The country's economy contracted by a record 23%. Ukraine's gold and foreign exchange reserves at that time amounted to a modest $650 million. The country lived in a regime of strict austerity. Despite this, in September 1994, the International Monetary Fund allocated the first systemic loan to Ukraine, $371 million. This was a recognition of Ukraine as an entity in the global financial system separate from Russia. Small businesses flourished in the country's markets. People were learning to trade and survive in new conditions.
The geopolitical game, the battle for Crimea, and Clinton's visit. Even then, Russia was trying to test the boundaries of Ukrainian sovereignty. At the beginning of the year, a so-called president, Yuri Meshkov, was elected in Crimea, who set a course for the peninsula's secession and integration with the Russian Federation. However, the official Kyiv showed its will. The Verkhovna Rada abolished the post of president of Crimea, subordinated the government of the autonomy to itself, and deployed special units of the Security Service of Ukraine to stabilize the situation. The crisis was suppressed through political and legal means, without bloodshed. In January 1994, the President of the United States of America, Bill Clinton, visited Kyiv. This was a powerful signal. America saw Ukraine as a key strategic partner. Clinton supported the country's sovereignty in exchange for a constructive position on the nuclear issue. The Nunn-Lugar program also began to operate actively, under which the United States allocated hundreds of millions of dollars in technical assistance for the safe liquidation of the Soviet military legacy. And on February 8th, Ukraine was the first among the countries of the Commonwealth of Independent States to sign the Partnership for Peace program document, officially securing its interest in integration with NATO. The Budapest Memorandum, a great deal or a great betrayal? This event became central. Ukraine possessed the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world, that is, 176 intercontinental missiles and more than 1,800 nuclear warheads. On December 5, 1994, a historic memorandum was signed in Budapest. The leaders of the world powers guaranteed Ukraine's security in exchange for giving up its atomic weapons. The signatures on the document were placed by, from Ukraine, President Leonid Kuchma; from the United States of America, President Bill Clinton; from the United Kingdom, Prime Minister John Major; from Russia, President Boris Yeltsin. These countries officially pledged to respect the independence and existing borders of Ukraine, as well as to refrain from any use of force or economic pressure. Ukraine fulfilled its part of the deal by transferring the weapons to Russia for destruction. Today, this document is the primary reminder of how Ukraine trusted international law for the sake of world peace. Culture, stars, and the birth of a new brand. Despite the political storms, Ukraine gave birth to its heroes. In 1994, at the Winter Olympics in Norway, 16-year-old figure skater Oksana Baiul brought the country its first gold medal. When the blue and yellow flag was raised, the world saw a new nation. The American public was delighted with her story. World legends began to arrive in Kyiv, from LaToya Jackson to the group Army of Lovers. Kyiv was becoming part of the global concert schedule. At the same time, 1994 was the era of wild capitalism. Shots rang out in Kyiv. During the redistribution of property, a crime boss named Tchaikovsky was shot dead. Society was purging itself of old structures. And on June 14th, Ukraine took another important step by signing the Partnership and Cooperation Agreement with the European Union. The year 1994 showed that Ukraine is a country of incredible resilience. We gave up the most formidable weapons in the world, survived an economic storm, and defended our borders through diplomacy. We continue our journey through the turbulent 90s, an era that shaped the modern world. Ahead of you lie many more gripping stories about the life, politics, and secrets of Ukraine, Russia, and the United States of that time. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give a like to this video, and share it with your friends. We are very interested in your opinion. Write in the comments, what do you remember about the year 1994? Perhaps you remember the first Karbovanets coupons, Oksana Baiul's victory, or that very news about the Budapest Memorandum. Let's discuss history together.